Hello and welcome to this COMP3218 game design and development video from the University of Southampton. My name is Tom Blount, I am one of the lecturers on the course and I'm joined here today by
Charles Hutchins. I'm one of the student demonstrators on the course.
And today we're going to be looking at some more of our students' second courseworks. Charles, can you tell us a little bit about what we asked the students to do for this coursework?
So, yeah, sure. We asked them to create a game engine and a story engine, a small prototype of these, based on one of three fables.
Brilliant. Let's have a look at our first game. Alright, and this is A Farmer's Tale. So, really nice title screen. We've got some nice background music, and yeah, sort of really atmospheric little animation there. Let's have a quick look at the options. We've got some sound. Ooh, got a sound options. Always a nice touch. Let's jump right into it. Look at that, an integrated tutorial. They've been learning from the first coursework. Excellent. So we've got WSD to move on even. What's the word? Reacts. That's really nice.
Yeah.
Okie doke. And E to leave the house, presumably. And E to talk to whoever this is. Mark. Hi there, sir. My name is Mark, and I was sent here on behalf of the landlords to collect your land payments. I don't know what button is to continue. It's not E again. I guess we just have to click. Feels like that would be, a nice little extra bit of polish to keep the same interact key. It seems that I've been late. It seems that you have been late on many payments, and I will be forced to take away your property. Unless you're able to bring me some funds. Go now. I'll be waiting here until you figure out what to do. So we've been given an eviction notice, basically. That's certainly an inciting question. So let's wander through the woods and see who we can talk to. Hi, I'm Lisa. I was playing in these bushes and lost my precious ring. I see. Yes, we will help you find the ring. Oh, just some shiny trash. Oh, I see. So this one is glowing a little bit. Ah, we found the ring. So are we doing good playthrough or evil playthrough this time? Do you think?
I don't know. Should we do evil?
Should we do evil? Okay, yes. Let's not. Let's go give it straight to the guy and see how that progresses things. Oh, okay, maybe we have to go to a pawn shop and sell it. Just gonna. So normally I end up having to lower the volume from these, but I'm actually gonna have to raise it for this one because it's quite quiet, which is mostly good because it means we can happily talk over it. But I just want to make sure, yeah, there are some nice little sound effects there in the background. Do you mind doing something for me? There's a fox in these trees somewhere. It's been a real annoyance. I was wondering if you'd put it down. Nope, we've got places to be. Got a shiny ring to sell. Oh, there's a fox. Okay. We have a pet fox now. It's following us around. Should we talk to it? Seems this fox is pretty friendly. I think it wants to follow me. Okay.
Okay.
We have a new best friend.
No health bar or anything, so I'm guessing that's not a factor in this game.
It is getting darker though, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's because we're getting deeper into the forest or if it's if there's some sort of time of day thing. I'm so glad you stopped by. I was looking for someone to help me go check on my grandpa. We're being asked a lot of questions. I'm kind of keen to stay on the evil path, but I feel like we might be just missing massive chunks of the game if we do that. So I'll say yes.
Oh, so okay. I've got the story branching in front of me. I'm not sure what happens if you take there's good and bad sort of outcomes to each of these dialogue, these NPCs that you're talking to. It's not clear if one of them was good and say one of them was bad. It's only giving me options for if you do all of them well or all of them evenly.
Oh, okay.
Evenly, that's the word.
So not necessarily a neutral option. So it feels like there are some gaps between, pretty large gaps between these trees, but no, I guess we have to go find the path through the maze. Okay, so you know, some amount of like exploration, although interesting, and it feels like there isn't really an alternative. Like if we'd have said no there, would there have been a point to going through that maze?
No.
Oh, okay. Why couldn't your grandson just come and check on you? Why do we have to do it? Oh, fine, as you can see, run back to him and tell him. Oh, that was it. We're making sure that you're okay, and then we're going back. Okay, cool.
So apparently what you can do is you can go away and come back but not even check on Grandpa, and you can lie to him and say that he's okay.
Oh, okay. That's kind of interesting.
I'm not sure about this fox though. I don't know.
This doesn't feel like the right path. I think I'm going in circles. Yep, that's a dead end. Okie doke. I should have left a trail of breadcrumbs or something like that.
Yeah.
That could have been an interesting mechanical touch. We did base these 1 year. In fact, I think it might have been the very first year we ran the course off of Hansel and Gretel.
Oh yeah.
Okay, let's try
I suppose
this way.
I think what you mentioned, I think you stopped doing that because people were like a bit too focused on the actual story and getting the story across rather than actually interacting with the game. Is that right?
Yeah.
Why you changed it to Fables? Yeah.
Yeah, well, Fables have a much clearer sort of like moral or theme, so it's sometimes interesting to tie those to the mechanics. Anyway, we're out of the forest now, so we can get back to focusing on this. Yeah, we went to see him. That was it. Okay, I thought. Honestly, he wasn't a pain at all. If anything, you were a pain for making us go and do it. You could have just gone over there. It's your granddad. He was very lovely. Okay, so seemingly no real benefit at all to that. I don't know if there was anything else in that scene that we missed, but from what I could tell, there was a maze and a house, and that was it. So if we'd have, and that's not really helped us on our own quest, if you like. We're still.
Yeah.
Oh, and I already said no to you. No, the fox is our friend. Is he just going to ask us again if... I feel bad about this. So what happens if I say yes and then I talk to him? You're going to make him some sort of pet? Yes. Okay.
Oh, I see.
So you made it into a pet. What a waste of fur. Go away. I have no business with you. Okay.
I suppose it would have been a nice indication to have like, oh, you know, you can go this way or something.
So I've kept the ring because I thought, you know, well, I'm about to be evicted. I'll do this morally dubious thing and steal this ring, and nobody seems to want the ring, so I'm just going to give it back and see what happens. It seems there's nothing else I can do. I should return to my farm and see what is going to happen with my... See, it feels like we didn't have any choice at all there, right? Like nothing progressed until I did all of those things. So even though they presented it as a choice... Okie doke.
I think this is it's supposed to be the good ending because you checked on Grandpa, you kept the fox as a pet and didn't kill it, and you gave the ring back. So this is the good ending.
We've got some really nice music in the background. But it feels like we skipped some dialogue, and that may be a bit of a bug there that we've...
Yeah, I think this is... I think there's supposed to be some sort of dialogue here.
Yeah.
Is it frozen as well?
It's not. Oh, there we go.
Oh.
Okay, I tell you what, we'll start going through the mark scheme, I guess, and I'll go through it again and see if I can pick a different path through it. So first off, we're going to be looking at overall quality of the game. So first off, information design. So this is a nice example of the information design, actually, I guess, part of the sort of tutorial side of things.
Yeah.
It's quite clear when things are able to be interacted with. It's relatively clear sort of, where we're meant to go, because there is a path leading this way, even though it's actually sort of, blocked off. There's this path indicating that we should go over here, and there's a thing indicating that we should do this when we do this quest here. Yeah, we'll get you ring. Some of these light up that give us an indication of where we should be searching. So overall, most of the information design seems pretty good. Part of the issue that I think we're going to come up against shortly is there's not a huge amount of mechanics here, so there's not that much information to display either. But in terms of purely information design, what have we got? So, I mean, all the key information is shown, and it is shown clearly. But again, there's not an enormous amount of it, so possibly between a good and an excellent here, I think.
A good and excellent, or a satisfactory and a good?
I would say good and excellent, because, like I say, even things like the controls were really nicely tutorialized. The paths through the level are really nicely explained.
Yeah.
It's just other than that, there's not a huge amount. Okay, graphics. Graphics are quite lovely.
They're consistent and effective.
Yeah, I would say consistent, effective, and appealing. Like some of these sprites are maybe a little bit different, but not jarringly so. So yeah, I would say probably an excellent for the graphics as well.
And audio is next. So you're saying that there's some quite nice background music and effects. Is that right?
Yeah. So. Sorry, I'm just seeing if I say no, like we have to say yes to him, right? And then it's just a case of whether we lie or not.
Yeah, we have to say yes and then lie if we get the bad ending.
So we'll talk about this in a moment when we're coming to agency, but presenting that as a choice is kind of like false agency, right? We have no choice. We have to do that. The only other choice is stop playing the game, unfortunately. But yeah, in terms of audio, yeah, there's some nice background music. There's some nice sort of effects when we sort of click through the various like UI and bits like that. There's some sort of walking noise as we go along. That's kind of nice. So in terms of audio, complementary and appealing effects and music.
Yep.
Which would put them at an excellent. And I think to go beyond that, if they had some sort of adaptive soundtrack or something cool like that, that'd really push it beyond that. But in terms of meaningful play,
yes. So mechanics. So
hang on. Sorry, just to leap in again. If I do speak to him and I haven't gone to see him, he says that I've not, so I can't decide not to.
It's interesting. What is this here that you can't? There is an option to lie.
It doesn't seem to. Like he knows that I've not gone and seen him, so that either perhaps there's something not quite triggering in their game as they expect, or that's maybe not an accurate representation of the choices. Maybe if I leave the screen and go back to him. Or maybe I've just got to walk out of sight and then come back and then be like, oh yes, I totally saw him. So yeah, meaningful play. So first off, the mechanics. So we don't have a huge amount of mechanics. Yeah, so he's still So obviously, we've got walking, we've got interacting with things. We do technically have, picking up items like the ring, but there's no sort of like inventory screen. We can't see what we're carrying. So actually, maybe that's something that sort of hinders the information design a little bit. But there's also no reason to be holding the ring because we can't give it to somebody else. It's just progressing that sort of bit of dialogue. So there we go. So I've been into the house and back. Now I've got to remember why through this. Primarily, the sort of like the main mechanic is sort of like navigating these dialogues, whether that's sort of just clicking through them and then trying to find the thing in the world that unlocks the next bit, I guess.
Yeah.
So here, there's like a maze, which is sort of a bit of a puzzle. So yeah, he knows that I've not gone to see his granddad. Okay, so satisfactory would be a set of consistent mechanics. Good would be a set of complementary mechanics, and I don't think really we have enough mechanics to be complementary. So
it's sort of in between satisfactory and good.
I think it's probably at the satisfactory level. Like the mechanic, like obviously the walking is fine, the talking to people is fine, but there's not enough else there that you can combine those things in interesting or complementary ways. So I mean, honestly, we're almost at the poor level, which is just there are few mechanics. So I think we may need to put it between a poor and a satisfactory, which sort of evens out at a pass.
Okay, yeah.
So I don't think it's so a satisfactory would be a pass would be inconsistent mechanics. I don't think they're inconsistent. I just don't think there's enough of them. But I think the ones that are implemented are well enough that it's not quite down at a poor level. Okie doke. Controls. Again, we're kind of at the issue that there's not a huge amount of sort of mechanics or ways to interact with the game as a system. Yeah. So there's not a lot of controls. Like, the movement feels fine, the interaction feels fine. I had like a minor complaint about the it'd be nice if you used the same interact key that you use for everything else for advancing the dialogue rather than having to sort of move my hand over to the mouse. But like that's a minor bit of polish. The main issue is there isn't a lot of mechanics. Yeah, I don't think I could necessarily call it a mechanic unless I was being very charitable, but the way the fox follows you around, like, and paths after you, like, is quite nice, right? It's not something we have direct control over, but it's a thing that they've thought of as they're designing it, at least. So controls. Again, a pass would be few or challenging controls. A satisfactory would be a reasonable set of usable controls. And I think, again, for the mechanics that they've got, they have a reasonable set of controls.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably a satisfactory there. Is there anything around this path? I don't think we've been this way before. It looks dark and scary. Maybe there's somebody that will buy this ring. Nope, just a dead end. Okie doke. So yeah, I think a satisfactory for that. Bugs. I guess we'll see shortly if that ending bug happens again. But yeah, that was something that sort of fair. Interesting. So I can lie to him here, but I can lie to him to say that I didn't go and see him. Why would I want to do that?
Yeah.
Let's. If I say no, I'm still surprised you saw him so fast. What?
Okay.
So I can lie that I've not seen him, and then he doesn't believe that I did see him, even though I did. Wait, and now he pays? He didn't pay us the first time, though, right?
No.
Okay, that's... so I'm not sure if that's a bug or if that's just a flawed story engine. Because we don't have the option to lie to him and say that we've already seen him. We only get the option to lie after we've seen him and if we lie that we didn't see him, he thinks we're trying to he gives us payment for as if we did. Yeah, that's a bit confusing, I think, unfortunately. Sure.
So I suppose we'll wait till the end of this playthrough to see about bugs.
Killed the fox and I feel bad now. Okay, so we have to okay, so we can't just keep the ring. We have to tell her that we couldn't find it if we want to progress that bit. Okay.
Alright.
Okay, so we get some dialogue here. It was just the first one that didn't quite...
Yeah.
It's been heard throughout the country how you, the wicked farmer, lied and deceived to everyone to get this money. How do you feel now that greed has taken over your morals and ruined your soul? You will suffer the consequences and be exiled to live in... Well, okay. That seems a little bit unfair, given that you were going to throw me out unless I got you money.
Yeah.
Okay, let's try a good playthrough again. In terms of bugs, okay. So satisfactory would be the game is reasonably complex, there are minor bugs. A pass would be the game is simple or there are serious bugs. Feels like we may be at a pass level because the game is, well, it's not totally simple. There are a number of different scenes, there are a number of different dialogue options, there are a number of different sort of points in the flowchart, if you like, of the story. So I don't think it's that simple. I am still a bit unsure as to whether that is like a serious bug in the ending and whether that issue that we had with the grandson, if you like, is a bug or just like their story engine. Is it not working as they expect, or is it just not working, I guess is the question.
Yeah. So
it feels like probably either between a pass and satisfactory or a satisfactory, I think, for this.
Yeah. I thought, I don't know, whereas like before, you know, when we said between, you know, so the passes, the game is simple, there's some serious bugs, like you said, the game, yeah, like I say, the game isn't very simple. And then a good would be a game is reasonably complex, but there are infrequent minor bugs.
Like it wasn't game breaking, right? Like the worst that happened is that we missed a little bit of dialogue. So
yeah, but I suppose well, the problem is that that bug happened at the end. Well, apart from the grandson and the grandpa bug, the other bug was the fact that we don't really have an ending the first time you played.
Right, but it didn't crash the game. It may have missed a bit of dialogue, but it wasn't like a...
True.
Like it didn't sort of stop us getting to the end, and it didn't even sort of mean that we had to quit out. So I'd be inclined to put it at a satisfactory. Like possibly you're right. It's a little bit like erring on the side of yes, I'm gonna keep the fox as a pet. But let's keep it as a satisfactory for now. Let's see if it occurs again, and maybe we'll revisit that bit.
Yeah.
Fulfilling the brief next. So the story engine. So how well does the game world react to the story? So the actions that we take progress the dialogue of the various NPCs.
Yes.
So for example, this guy won't talk to us until we've gone and spoken to his grandpa. It doesn't seem to work exactly as we'd expect, but there are other things like finding the ring, for example, advances the dialogue of the little girl, and ultimately it changes the overall ending.
Yeah.
So a good would be a number of examples where the game world impacts the story in important ways. A satisfactory would be where the game world impacts the story. And again, this is the thing, like, is it an important way? Like, it changes the ending, which, I mean, I guess is pretty important.
To the story, but it is, yeah.
Although, like, this guy, for example, repeats the same dialogue forever now. So maybe between a satisfactory and a good. The bigger question is, what about the other way? Does the story ever impact the game world? So it's not like, for example, well, kind of. I was going to say it's not like dialogue with NPCs unlocks new areas or new mechanics or anything like that. The only real impact is once we have spoken to all of the NPCs, then it unlocks the end of the game.
Which is more story than actual gameplay, isn't it?
Well, it unlocks like the next phase of the... Like, we can go and sort of go back to the first NPC and sort of talk to him and get... Like, you're right, it's... Yes, we're going to see your grandpa. I'm so glad you checked. So yeah, so if we tell the truth that we saw him, he believes us completely. If we lie that we didn't see him when we did see him, he thinks we did see him but doesn't believe that, even though we told him that we didn't.
It would be interesting. I suppose this would be a little bit, if the fox did something, like that was a decision that we made, and if the fox sort of helped us out in the game world,
yeah,
I suppose that would have been kind of fulfilling that brief, wouldn't it? It would have been the story to get.
Yeah, like we make the story choice of save the fox or kill the fox, and it led us through the forest or something, right? That would be like a pretty perfect example of. Haven't I? I thought I'd done everything. Oh, I haven't given the ring back. There we go. Okie doke. So let's see if that ending happens again. Nope. So it just skips that bit of dialogue. But presumably this is the happy ending. We've made everyone happy. Okay, so next time through I will try and make some of the people happy and some of the people sad and see what happens. So yeah, in terms of story to game world, it feels like maybe, like, again, at a pass level, because they're... as part of the coursework, we asked the students to hand in some notes along with their game, just so they can tell us, how they feel that it accomplishes some of these things. So do they mention in their notes anything about how their story engine works?
So for how the game world impacts the narrative, or the way around, or both?
Well, let's hear about both.
So you can impact the game by not triggering quests or altering a quest's ending.
You can impact the game by not triggering quests.
Yes.
That seems a bit of a stretch. That's like saying you can alter the game by not playing the game.
I think it's that they're also impacting the overall game ending depending on the choices you make throughout the game. Okay. So yeah, by not triggering quests.
And again, I think that's a false choice, right? Like, we can not trigger the quests, but then the game won't end, so we have to trigger the quests.
I mean, does it work that we have to trigger all of them, don't we? Is there a playthrough where we could just, like, find the ring, give the ring, and then go back? There isn't, is there? I don't think we're allowed to do that.
No, we tried that, and that didn't work.
Okay, so the other bit in their notes was, how does the game world impact the narrative? By choosing to interact or not with different things in the game, you can avoid finishing quests or even change the quest's outcome, and even prevent you from accessing areas.
Like what?
Prevent you from accessing areas.
We've not seen anything.
I don't think there's anything, unless we've completely missed something of the game world. but I don't think we have. And it seems like we can access all of it.
Yeah, and in fact, this guy even says, "Oh, thanks for checking on me. I know my grandson sent you," even though he didn't. So yeah, that's. So either like their game isn't working, or that doesn't seem to be an accurate description of how their story engine works, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Okay, so in story to game world, then we've said that none of the sort of like the dialogue choices or the story choices, like saving the fox, really have an impact on the way that the game world plays, other than it triggers the ending once we've done all of them. So I think that's probably at a pass level there.
Yeah. Okay. Shall on to our next section, which is agency.
Okie doke. So firstly, I guess the richness of structure. So you've got their game notes. What does their structure look like? Because from the so we effectively have a couple of different choices throughout. From what I can tell, we have find the ring and then lie about finding it or not. Save the fox or don't save the fox, and then the one that's a bit broken, which is go and visit the grandpa and then lie about whether you saw him or not.
Yeah, and that's exactly what they've got in their tree structure, and all the positive things about your 3 interactions with the NPCs go towards a good ending, and the 3 bad ones go towards the bad ending. There isn't much indication of if you have a mixed kind of morality, if you like. Say like you kill the fox, but you then do all the good things.
I think that's what I'm going to do. So let's see what happens if I. But they definitely have a number of branching points, right? There are 3 pretty clear points where the story branches. It'll be interesting to see how it ties back into the ending, but there are definitely sort of branches. Whether the impact of them is substantial, we will find out in a moment, I guess. But in terms of the structure itself, it's actually not too bad. We've got. I'm trying to read dialogue and do this at the same time. Not going to keep as a pet. Thing dies. We get paid. So a good would be several branching points. An excellent would be a number of branching points throughout the game. Again, it feels like we're maybe between a good and an excellent for that, because there are a number of different branching points. One of them doesn't quite work, and the overall scope is maybe a little bit simple, but I think that's still probably a good and an excellent.
Yeah.
It seems you brought me insufficient funds to keep your property. Fortunately, the good citizens you helped along the way. Okay, so that's. So I guess that's the dialogue for the good ending, right? And although we killed the fox, we still just get the straight good ending.
Yeah.
Maybe killing a fox isn't evil. Maybe that is the good choice. I'm not sure.
Oh no, keeping the fox as a pet is the good ending.
Okay.
According to the tree. But yeah, depending on your own moralities, killing the fox might be the better ending.
Okay, so yeah, it looks like it's basically just if you do 2 out of 3 good, you get the good ending, and if you do 2 out of 3 bad, you get the bad ending. Which I guess makes sense. It keeps things sort of relatively simple in terms of that sort of management of agency. So I would say between a good and an excellent for structure. The trick is here the quality of the choices. I guess. Okay, so actually one of the other parts of this is managing agency. So the fact that, so I guess this is what they were talking about with unlocking and locking areas, right? We have to speak to this guy before we sort of wander off into the wilderness. And that's actually quite a good way of managing agency. It means we have to get the initial story stuff before we continue on. Are these choices interesting though? narratively, I think they're not bad, actually. It's, given the sort of inciting incident, the question, the fact that we desperately need money, are we going to compromise our morals to do it? Like, this first one works really, really well, because it's definitely highly related to the previous one. Yeah. The second one with the fox is, do you kill the fluffy, cuddly, wuddly animal because somebody will pay you to do it? Again, still kind of related. It's
not so clear, I suppose. That I don't know.
I think that's it. It's not clear that you're being paid to do it, or that.
Yes.
Like it feels like this could do with. It goes back to the information design and the mechanics, right? If we had like a number in the top right corner that said you have 0 money, and every time we did this, like the money went up or down, so we make this choice, and we're holding the ring, so we have an extra $200 or whatever in our pocket, or 200 doubloons or gold or whatever you want to call it. And if we give it back, that goes away again. And so on and so on and so on. So that would really tie that together with the mechanics of the game. So as such, like the choices are kind of like interesting from a story point of view. Again, the one where it's like, if you go through the woods and meet my grandfather, I'll give you all of the money I have. Possibly a little bit on the nose, and a little bit strange given that he's right next to the building as well, so I don't know why he'll give us all of his stuff. And again, that if we tell him we didn't, he'll still give it to us and then call us a liar. Again, a bit weird and broken. But instead of harping on about that, it feels like we're actually at a good here. So some interesting choices and attempts to manage the player agency. I think the thing that they fall down on, so while they do that good, that element of making sure that we speak to the main NPC to get the sort of setting and framing of the story before we go on, that's really good management of agency. Giving us these choices of, hey, can you help me find it? Yes, no. And if we say no, we just have to keep talking to her until we select yes, because otherwise the game will never end. That's kind of a poor management of agency. It gives you this choice and then basically just you have to keep making that choice until you pick the right option. So yeah, it feels like a good, maybe between a satisfactory and a good. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd say it was probably like, I'd say it's probably more on satisfactory. Well, but like you said, there are attempts to manage the player's agency. Yeah, between the two.
Yeah. So I think this is I think the choices would be more interesting if they were more tied to the mechanics of the game. And we've already said there's maybe a limited set of those. But sort of narratively, the choices are quite interesting. They fit the sort of moral and the theme that they're going for, which we'll talk about in a moment. In fact, we'll talk about right now, because the first design element is poetics. So how easily how well do mechanics reflect the moral of the fable that they're trying to retell? Well, first off, which fable are they trying to retell? Which do you think it is?
This is the farmer and the crane, isn't it?
Well, you'd think that because it's called the farmer's something, but the moral of that is if words don't suffice, then violence will follow, and it doesn't feel like it's that, does it?
Oh God, no, it's not, is it?
To me, I think this might be the tortoise and the eagle, which is all about, if a man gets everything he wished for, then he's doomed, right? Bad things happen. Be careful of what you wish for is basically the moral of that. And it feels like that's what this is going for with the whole, if you get all of the money that you need to save your farm, you actually get exiled and die in ignominy? Which feels, the ending there feels like kind of a bit of a brutal bait and switch. Like, this guy is telling us he's going to throw us out of our house unless we get him this money, and if we get him the money, he throws us out of our house. It's not like we get to keep the house, but everybody hates us. And in terms of the overall premise, yes, there's a premise. Yes, it mostly mirrors the themes of the fable. In terms of how well the gameplay supports it, as we've already said, the gameplay is kind of minimal. There is no mechanics as metaphor here. It's all done through the sort of dialogue and story decisions, not the gameplay itself. Which pretty much puts it at the satisfactory level, right? The gameplay doesn't interfere with the narrative, it just doesn't support it in any way.
Yeah, it doesn't go against the themes of the story for sure. Yeah, I think it's quite solidly at that level. Right, so pacing. Pacing is a bit of an interesting one because I feel it's fairly flat.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you there. There's I'm not sure I'd even call it a climax at the end. I'd call it a resolution, but it's not necessarily a climax, right? You just get a dialogue pop up that says, well, it looks like I've done everything there is to do now, so I should go back. And then there's like an epilogue, but there's not really a climax, and there's, like you say, there's not really ascendant pacing. Like all of the gameplay is like the same throughout the game, and that's partly because we can do it in any order, although there's not really a need to. So
probably a pass then.
yeah, it's kind of at the pass level. There's not a lot of pacing, and again, this is something that they could have done with like a sprinkle of extra mechanics, like a ticking clock. So the guy says, you've got 3 days to get me the money, and you do something, and then it's the end of the first day, and now it's the second day, and you've got less time, and I've got to go and see, can I get all the way through the wood today in order to get the money that I need to, that kind of a thing. Sort of building a few layers of sort of like adding a ticking clock is a very, very simple way of adding some sort of ascendant pacing. It's like often like very over simple, but it can be effective. But that's one way to do it. So yeah, I think for this it's a pass. It's a little bit flat, but they have made an attempt to sort of have some amount of pacing. So there's like the sort of structure of like you meet the 3 people, and then there's the resolution. Okay, in terms of techniques, what techniques have they used to tell this game, or to tell the story throughout this game?
Well, some useful dialogue boxes, and we have some choices.
Yeah, it's not really a dialogue tree. It's just a yes or no choice. But it's
True.
We've got some dialogue, some interaction, and we also have the cutscene at the end, where control is taken away from the player. The camera moves to like a different sort of part of the scene, and we get sort of some more dialogue and sort of some music there. So it's I would say it's relatively simple use of a number of different techniques, which I think puts it at the good, right? They've used a couple of different game writing techniques. They're perhaps a little bit on the simple side, but they use a number of different techniques to tell that story.
Yeah.
And last of all, for this game, feedback. So during the sort of development cycle, we gave the students some feedback on their games, and then asked them to interpret and respond to that. So what did they say about the feedback that they were given?
They said they were given feedback to keep in mind the moral of the story and how it should be cleared throughout the game. So they changed that game to show that these changes instead of only having the having the clear moral at the end. We make it clear throughout most dialogue interactions as to inform the player on what their choices mean, so that the ending doesn't feel as if it comes out of nowhere. I'm not sure that's been.
That doesn't feel like it.
Partially successful.
It doesn't feel like it's coming across. So there's. So I mean, if we talk to this guy again, we get some sort of dialogue, I guess, sort of framing the choices that we've made. But yeah, okay. Any other sort of bits of feedback they mentioned?
That's it.
Oh, really? Okay. In which case, it's a bit difficult to say. From the sounds of it, yeah, like they have addressed it. So So to summarize, they've said, the moral's key, the sort of poetics of the story is important. So rather than just having it appear at the end, they try and make it clear throughout.
Yeah.
I
suppose the money element was sort of introduced at the end. I suppose that's what I'm.
Yeah, the thing is, like
to sort of come into the tortoise and the hare, the tortoise and the crane.
Eagle.
Eagle.
They all blur together, don't they? So yeah, like they specifically say at the end, like, oh, this is what your greed has wrought, kind of a thing. So they do really underline it at the end. They partially underline it throughout, though.
Yeah.
But like, we don't really see the consequences of stealing this ring or lying to the guy about the grandfather, or I mean, I guess we see the consequence of killing the fox, but like, is that like it doesn't necessarily tie it to that moral directly. So a pass would be that the feedback was addressed, but the changes have had some limited success. A satisfactory would be the changes have been somewhat successful. I'm inclined to put it sort of partway between the two.
Yes, so yeah, between a pass and a satisfactory. Yeah.
Okie doke. And that brings us to the end of this game. Alright, and this one is The Monster's Judgment. So again, really nice title screen. We've got some atmospheric music in the background. Ooh, the buttons are floating around.
Oh, yeah.
That makes it slightly trickier to click on, but we'll do our best. Ooh, look at that. Nice little introduction. Little cutscene. You and your friends are travellers wandering village to village in search of adventure. Last night you found signs point... Ooh, and there's a skip button as well. That's kind of handy. After deciding to investigate, you and your friend now find yourselves in a clearing in the woods. Strange noises all around you. So yeah, when we're sort of talking about game writing techniques and things like that, we're not expecting fully rendered AAA style cinematic cutscenes. You can do a lot with just like a really simple like fade in of an image and a movement of some of the characters. So I guess that's us and our friend. You need to keep up, friend, you say as he catches up to you. I can see which moral and which fable we're going for. Terrifying monster emerges. It looks angry. Blimey, it's big and terrifying. Okay. So we can try and defend your friend from the monster, or we can hide and save your own life. Let's pick try and defend your friend. Bonk, bonk, bonk. Oh no, we've been catapulted away. In a heroic attempt to defend your friend, you flail your sword, but the monster pays no attention and drags you away. You wake up in a strange dungeon, and around you lies equipment. You've been experimented on and you feel stronger, faster, and angrier. But be careful, with your power and rage comes great risk. Know that if you... Interesting, it feels like maybe we've got a second fable sort of creeping in a bit here. Okie doke, so we've got some more integrated tutorial. It's a shame that it's in the basic Unity font, because I was about to say how nicely everything else was done, but Okay. I like that it's integrated into the level. So we've got so it shows up sort of as we need it. They've remembered the stuff from the tutorial coursework, which is like introduce stuff as you need it, make sure that the player can use it before you let them progress. Like that, they've actually done really well. And look, they've even sort of done the sort of Mario style style thing of larger and larger challenges as you go. Okay. So I have lost half my health now because I was somewhat surprised by that. Oh, it regens, nice. Okay, bonk, bonk, bonk. You're right, I am faster and stronger. So I'm just going to stand here and wait for that to regen again. There we go.
They also have a rage meter as well.
Ooh. Does that decrease as I go? Or is that...
I'm just reading the description.
Oh, I died. checkpoint slightly nearer, unfortunately, but it is what it is. Okay, so in a moment we'll start looking at the mark scheme and starting off with quality, but overall, like, the actual gameplay is quite nice. The regeneration mechanic, though, feels like it's a bit of a break in the flow, because I'm not very good at avoiding damage. Maybe that's just me, but I need full health to take on every monster, so I have to sit and hide behind this rock before I can progress, which sort of really interrupts some of the gameplay, which is a bit of a shame. But on the other hand, I like that they've included that regeneration as a mechanic. So it might need a little bit of extra polish, but I think it's actually quite nice. And then there we go, managed to avoid it that time. But again, I'm going to sit here and wait. So maybe if it just kicked in a little bit faster when you're out of combat or something like that, that'd be good.
Oh, okay, so the rage meter has something to do with the story. I don't know if you want spoilers or not.
I have a feeling it's to do with the amount of monsters I kill, and the more monsters I kill, the more monstrous I'm going to become.
Yeah, basically that.
I'm trying to remember if that's something I spoke to them about in the expo, or if I'm just really, really good at intuiting mechanics. Probably the yeah, which is interesting, and we'll come back to. Like, it's nice that there's story elements being communicated through gameplay. You can tell I'm going for like a full rage playthrough if I can do it without dying. It does mean that you need, like, if a lot of your fun and sort of engaging and your core dynamic is around the combat, it means your alternative choice needs to be just as engaging as the other path. So, like, running past all of the monsters needs to be just as fun and engaging as actually fighting them, if that's going to be part of your story choice.
Yes. So one of the ones that other games do is stealth, isn't it? Because they introduce some sort of stealth mechanic. So it is.
It doesn't even have to be stealth. It can just be like having to sort of escape and evade, if you like, as a core dynamic.
Yeah.
Sort of pivot between that and destruction.
Yes.
And they do have like some of these different platformer elements as well. So it's not like you're missing all of the content, but you are, I guess, missing part of it. Okay, so while I'm fumbling my way through this, shall we? Uh-oh. Oh, I thought we'd found a little bug there. Okay, yeah, shall we have a look at the mark scheme?
Yes, so first category is quality, specifically information design.
Oh, no.
So we're going to see if...
Don't tell me it restarts all the way. Oh no, that's not great.
Do we think that most of the key information is shown, or how much key information is shown, basically? Well, we've got a health bar,
Which
is very useful.
We've got like the enemies telegraphing their attacks really nicely. We've got our rage meter, although I noticed the rage meter hasn't reset. So again, bug or design choice, who can say? The path through the levels is relatively clear.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think overall, pretty much all. Is there anything that we think we're missing at this stage?
I don't think so, unless we're going to pick up some items later on.
Yeah, in which case
that they would need to be displayed, obviously. But I don't. Maybe we're not. Maybe we're not going to get anything, which is fine.
Cool. So in which case, I would say all the information's displayed pretty clearly.
Yeah. And then our next category is graphics. So are they consistent, effective, and appealing?
Oh, I think they are, yeah.
Oh, I think they probably are. Yeah.
That was close. But see, now I'm pretty compelled to just sit here and suck my thumb until all my health is back.
Yeah, I was talking to my friends about this sort of like style of gaming. It's very Dark Souls, isn't it? I've never actually played Dark Souls before.
You don't have regenerating health in Dark Souls, do you?
No, but
I'd say if anything, it's more like Call of Duty, right? It's take a shot and then hide behind a chest-high brick wall until the blood spatter falls off your face and you're fine again.
Oh yeah, no, more in the fact that enemies do a lot of damage.
Oh, I see. Sort of.
You could one swipe from a skeleton, I think, halves your health.
So it's more about avoiding being hit.
Oh.
Cool. I guess we're just in a new level now. Whoop.
Oh.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
Alright. Now we're back here again. I did a thing that killed me, apparently, although I had no idea it was going to do that. My rage meter's still full, so I'm just going to ignore all of these things and run past. Oop, no, that killed me. Okay.
Oh, you get a die screen. Interesting. Have you always had that box come up?
That's the point. It didn't come up a second ago, right? We just got teleported back here. So maybe that's just a bug in the level transition?
Yeah. Anyway, sorry. So we've done...
Did we do graphics?
We did graphics, consistent, effective and appealing. And now we're going to go for audio. So I can't hear the game itself.
Yep, so this one's all on me. Yeah, there's definitely appealing audio. The music is maybe not as tense and dramatic as something like this needs, where we're sort of fighting or running our way out of a horrible experiment dungeon thing. But it's vaguely medieval. It sort of vaguely fits the theme. There are some good sort of sound, and this ties back into the feedback when there's that green goop enemy that is firing magic missiles or whatever they are. There's some good satisfying thunks when you hit something with a sword. It's there. I was about to say, oh, is there a noise when I get damaged? But I didn't actually check that. Let's try again. Oi, skeleton. Okay, yeah, and we get sort of a little a thunk and a what's the word? Our sprite flashes as well, which ties back into the information design, which is really nice. So yeah, I think where are we? Complementary and appealing audio.
Yep.
Again, I think it could be maybe more thematically resonant, or it could do some cool stuff with adaptation based on if our health is low, it gets more frantic or something like that. But that's really the top end of the mark scheme. So next is meaningful play. So the mechanics and how it controls, and if there are any bugs. So I guess we're going to double check whether that's a bug or not in a moment. I'm pretty sure it might have been.
Yeah.
In terms of meaningful play, we've got a number of different mechanics. We've got different types of enemies. We've got attacking, we've got moving, we've got jumping and double jumping. We've got a rage meter that presumably is going to have some important effect later on.
Yes, and also there is another set of mechanics according to the notes if you take the other choice at the starting screen.
So I was going to talk about that. It's okay. So it feels like going that way is bad. Let's go this way instead. Yeah, it feels like they set it up so that they've almost made two separate games there. Ooh. Okay, a nice bit of interactive UI. I really like the way that pops up and disappears, actually.
Yeah.
Odd that it was, again, in a different font to everything else, but... what do we have here? You seem very... So we've even got, as we're talking about mechanics, we've got, interaction with NPCs and dialogue. She's very small, or we're enormous. So yeah, set of complementary mechanics. Would we say it's a wide set? Oop.
I'm not sure I'd say it was wide.
Every time I click next, I accidentally hit her with my sword. I'm not intimidating you with my fierce eyes, I'm intimidating you by smacking you around the head with a sword, apparently. Well then, oh, there's even like a little, what's the word, dialogue, an audio bark when we first speak to an NPC. That's really nice. Cool, so nice. So, I think we'll come back to this when we're talking about the story engine. I suspect that dialogue changes based on our rage meter.
What can I do for you?
Right.
Because everyone's being very scared and saying that they've all encountered our kind. Ooh. So you did say you'd trade, but although...
Yeah, but that doesn't actually give you a...
Yeah, I don't think we have anything to trade, but let's go find the blacksmith and pick on him.
Well met, friend.
Blah, blah, blah. Okay.
Well met, friend.
Oh no, that's the innkeeper, not the blacksmith. Oop. Okay, never mind. See, now I'm nervous because the last time there was a scene transition I accidentally had to go all the way back to the start. So do I go left or right, do you think?
I'm guessing left, because it's been a left scroll so far, hasn't it? Oh,
Well
is
met,
that
friend.
us?
That's our friend. It would be nice again, maybe if he had like a slightly different coloured hoodie or something,
Yeah.
just to tell us apart. I didn't know we were taken, it's not my fault. I know you're mad, but is that blood on your hands? Yes, I had to kill a lot of skeletons to get... Although, thinking about it, skeletons don't have blood, do they?
Well, yeah, I was going to say, there's a lot of marrow on your hands.
Yeah. Cool, so I imagine the rage is taking over and we're killing our friend. It's a little bit of a shame that there's the fact that we keep smacking people with our sword as we're talking to them, because it kind of undermines this bit.
Yeah.
Despite your best efforts to control your rage, your friend's betrayal angers you to your core. He begs as you step closer and closer, frothing at the mouth with fury. Cool, so a nice little sort of epilogue there where misfortune tests the sincerity of friends. It certainly does. Cool, so that's ending 1. It would be like maybe a nice little touch if it showed us on like that screen how many endings there were to get and how many we'd gotten so far.
Yeah.
Okie doke. Let's hide and save our own life this time, and then we'll go for the other. It feels like there are going to be 3 or 4 endings here, right? Depending on how this one plays.
Yeah.
Okie doke. We were in the middle of talking about mechanics.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So, okay, in terms of that... what's the word? Ooh. So here we go. Different mechanic. Space to climb. E to hide... This is why we stopped talking about mechanics. So we can hide... Okay,
I'll hide the barrel.
I'm inclined to say that, yeah, this is a wide set actually now, because we have 2 different characters with 2 different styles of gameplay. I don't know if that hiding is going to become important.
Also, you're time limited, it looks like, by the top right.
You're right.
It's not very nice having a time to read text, maybe. I don't know. I don't know what you think about that.
Well met, friend. Well met, friend.
Oh, okay, we don't actually have to
Well
click
met,
next to continue, we
Well
just
met,
press. Oh, although we can't get rid of the dialogue until we press next, we can just continue. That's interesting.
What can I do for you? What can I do for you? What can I do for you?
Okay. So we still can't trade with the
What can I
merchant.
do for you?
We can hide in a barrel, but that doesn't seem to be helpful right now.
Well met, friend.
Bloody merchant sent you. The cowardly man is always bothering me for one. Oh, that was the blacksmith, I see. Okay, anyway, yeah, mechanics. So, wide set of mechanics?
Yes.
Okay, in terms of the... I keep talking to people and getting distracted. In terms of the controls, yeah, smooth, usable. I think they work really well. In fact, I would go ahead and say they're excellent. They're intuitive and smooth and usable. Other than maybe the getting through the dialogue, because if I press E, it feels like it just starts it again. There we go. But yeah, other than that, I think it controls really nicely. So
we're going to go for sort of a reasonable set of smooth controls. So good.
Smooth and intuitive, I would say it's excellent. Maybe between the two, if you think the dialogue sort of hampers it a lot. It's kind of interesting that the monsters still have health, given that we can't damage them in this. And also, its patrol doesn't seem to make that barrel useful. So it's probably just easier to just sprint through all of them.
This is a different level, is it, than before?
Oh, okay. Oh no, I don't
Or is
have
it
to
other
go all the way.
guns? So were the barrels there when we went through the first time?
I don't think they were. I think this is a different scene.
Okay.
Ooh, can't double jump, so I've got to... Hang on, I'm going to hide in this barrel and wait for my health to come back, and then I'll deal with you. So yeah, that actually as a mechanic is really kind of nice.
Hmm. It's very simple, but very effective.
Yeah, I'm gonna... I think...
Well, you are using it to get through, aren't you? So...
Yeah. Right, so bugs. I would say this is a reasonably complex game. I would say there are some infrequent minor bugs,
Yep.
which puts it at a solid good.
Yep. Yeah.
Cool, story engine. So, game world to story. So, I think the main one is... Ooh, I've just noticed our timer's run out, and that doesn't seem to have had an effect. Oh, hang on. Is it going to be a case of, oh, we reach our friend, and oh no, it's too late, he's been turned into a monster? I suspect that might be the case.
Yeah.
Oh. I think that actually, now that I say it again, this is the same scene as before. We are just seeing it in reverse, aren't we?
I thought so.
So I
It's
don't
either... Yeah.
I don't remember if those barrels were there, but suddenly that makes the layout of the level make a lot more sense as well. And I like that it works in both directions.
Yeah, that's quite clever. Reusing assets and all. Pretty good.
Yeah, both in terms of, just like design and not having to do a whole bunch of extra work twice, but you're also, in terms of like the narrative, you're seeing the same event from two different sides almost, even though it's
Yes.
pans out slightly differently.
Yeah.
You found me. Unlock these chains quickly before anyone comes back. They've been running experiments on me. Everything hurts. His skin has turned more pale, his teeth are sharper, and he looks mad enough that he might turn on you if you let him free. Ooh. Let's release him.
Well met, friend.
Finally, I'm free. How could you leave me like that? Okie doke. So yeah, while I'm going to go through this, yeah, there we go, not fast enough. So the timer did have an impact. So yeah, before we have a look at the mark team, what did they say in their game notes about how their story engine works?
Right. The narrative impacts the game world in many ways. Firstly, the mechanics are radically different depending on your first choice.
That would be the story impacting the game, but sure.
Yes. Furthermore, the NPC's interaction and their attitude towards the player also depend on which path they choose at the start. I don't know.
Again, that's story impacting the game, but go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yep, reading the wrong bit. There you go. The game world also deeply impacts the narrative. On the true friend path, the player will have a rage meter that will slowly be filled with each enemy killed. If the rage meter fills up completely, the reunion with the friend will result in the player killing him.
So yeah, as
he himself becomes a monster, desensitized to murder.
So as suspected, the more enemies we kill, the higher our rage goes, and that has an impact on the outcome of the story. So actions that we take within the gameplay have an effect on the outcome of the story. And
Yes.
presumably, which we'll see in a second, the way those NPCs talk to us.
I'm not seeing much of a
Oh, those
difference
barrels are
between
still there. What are you not seeing a difference, sorry?
with the NPCs, because they say, oh, we're going to have a shop, we're going to do this, and we're going to do that, and they don't really seem to
Well,
make much. Whether you talk to the NPCs or not, made kind of no difference.
this is absolutely true, but in terms of, like fleshing out and flavouring, or characterising, I should say, our protagonist, there's some degree of it, and it tells a little bit more of the story as well. through sort of
Yes.
like the dialogue with you. So you're right, it doesn't have like a mechanical game effect. Like the merchant doesn't actually sell us anything. But again, small game prototype. You know, you don't want to be adding too many additional mechanics to something of this scope. So it does like a nice little bit of characterization. And yeah, so in terms of game to story, I think we can say a number of examples where it impacts in important ways.
Yes. So good. Yeah.
What would an excellent be? A consistent interplay between the game world and the story. In fact, I think it might be there. Okay, no, this doesn't actually change the dialogue here. So it would be nice there if, because our rage meter was low, this dialogue was different, right? I think that would put it up to the excellent. So as it is, it basically changes the ending that we get, but not necessarily any of the story elements we receive throughout the game. So I'm not going to say it's an excellent, but I think it's at a good.
Yeah.
Okay, so story to game world. Do choices that we make within the story affect the game? And yes, although the story choice is kind of limited to, you know, like a big pop-up at the start of the game saying, do you want game A or game B, kind of. So I would say, so a good again would be a number of examples where it's impacting the game in important ways. There's really only one example, but it does so here's the thing, a satisfactory is some examples where it impacts the world. Good is a number of examples and where it does it in important ways. I think it does impact it in a very important way because it very dramatically changes the playstyle and the objective, but there's not a lot of them. So I think maybe between a satisfactory and a good for that.
Yeah.
Oh, there's our first barrel as well.
Well,
Hello, friend. So are we forgiving him? There we go. Thank you. Well, I am still smacking him over the head with a sword, but ending 2, we controlled our anger. Right, so now I've got to try and get ending 3 and mark the rest of this at the same time. So, agency, richness of structure. How does the story branch? So again, there's that first choice that is basically, do you want game A or game B? And there aren't really other... It's interesting, because there aren't really other branch points, right? There is a stat that's affected, and when it sort of tips the scales, then you sort of are on that other branch. So it's not necessarily a branching point, but it is definitely a branch.
Yeah. And on the other side, when you release your friend or not, when you go through as the kind of hide in a barrel character, you can say yes and he forgives you, or I'm just looking at the narrative structure.
Oh, that's right, there is that choice at the end, which is...
So you could try and find a cure for your friend.
Wait, what?
Or not, and the player dies. I'm not sure about... I don't know where this cure comes from.
Is that I have to get through in enough time and pick the right option, and then there's like an extra level to find a cure?
Say extra level. It just says... Maybe there is. I don't... It feels like... I don't know.
Alright, let's... So I'm just going to sprint through this then and see if I can get through in enough time to find out what that ending is. It's always a bit of a risk when your game relies on a timer, because me being able to play it well enough is difficult at the start, let alone having to play it and talk about it at the same time. Alright, we're making good time, it feels like, this time. Alright, off we go. No hiding in barrels. So again, the fact that there's a timer feels like it goes maybe a little bit against the fact that this character's power is hiding in a barrel, because you don't want to be hiding and waiting for a clock, or waiting for a guard to go past while you're waiting for a clock to tick down. particularly if your friend's life is at stake. But maybe that's part of the pacing, which we'll get to in a moment. Oh no, not that way. Now I've got, and again the regeneration as well, right? Has that same problem.
Mm.
Okie doke. Almost there though. Oh, we've still got loads of time to spare. I don't know why you were worried. It's fine. And there we go.
Well met, friend.
We found you. We made it enough time. Everything hurts. His skin has turned more pale, blah, 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 so we can release him or leave him. Let's release him, and if we talk to him, I don't know how much more of that I could have survived. They tortured me and tried to transform me into one of the monsters. Next time we either both run or we both fight. Let's get out of here. Blah, blah, blah. His face softens, you smile. The two of you leave the castle, never looking back. The two of you, with the goal of... Okay, so yeah, it's just the flavor text of the ending rather than an extra level or anything. Okay, so in terms of the branches, I guess there's several branching points, right? There's the choice at the start, there's this choice at the end, and there's the sort of two different mechanics that you can use, like the timer and the thing. So there are several branching points.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent would be a number of branching points throughout the game, and it feels like of the ones that we have sort of direct control over which branch we pick, they're right at the start and right at the end, so they're not really throughout. So I don't know if it quite hits the excellent. I think it's definitely a solid good though. What do you think?
Yes, yeah, I agree. Yeah, there's some. I quite like the fact that one of the choices is kind of done for you in terms of through gameplay, as in the rage meter. So it's not just a dialogue option choice.
Yeah, I like that it's like a diegetic choice, right? You make the choice by playing rather than by selecting a choice.
That's it. Yeah. So I would probably say it was a good as well. Yeah.
Okie doke. So quality of choices. How interesting do we think those choices are? So here's the thing. Again, the dialogue choices aren't that interesting. Because, I mean, like, they're fine, right? It's a defend your friend or run away kind of a thing. It's got some sort of moral implication in it. It's not a calculation because one isn't clearly better than the other. There's no real foreshadowing of what's going to happen depending on which choice we make. We don't know that we're going for combat gameplay or stealth gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of the choices, well, I guess the rage meter is more of a direct choice for the player, right? Like, are you going to attack things or are you going to run past them? That's kind of interesting. And are you going to try and balance it so that it's a case of, okay, this one's really in my way, so I'm going to kill this one, but then I'm going to have to avoid all the others to not tip myself over the edge. The timer is not really a choice, right? That's just a, are you good enough?
Yeah.
I guess there's the, oh, well, you could choose to stop and talk to all of the NPCs, but as we've already said, they don't really have much mechanical impact anyway, so the fact that they're... Like, if I'm on a clock, why would I stop and talk to them? So that's more of like a skill challenge about, whether you can do it in the right amount of time rather than a choice that you're making. So in terms of the... What have we got? So an excellent would be interesting choices and an effective system for managing agency. Do we think it's there, or do we think it's maybe between a good and an excellent?
I'd say probably between. There is some... Yeah, there is some...
So that's the thing. I think that rage meter choice is like a particularly interesting choice. Not all of the others perhaps are as interesting as that, but they're still like interesting attempts to manage agency and so on.
Yeah.
Okie dokie. Poetics. So we get the sense that the main premise of the story is the traveller and the two travellers and the bear, rather. So, dire circumstances testing the mettle of friends and so on. in terms of the premise, that's kind of immediately apparent. In terms of the gameplay, is it? There's no real choices that we make sort of in the play of the main game that really underline that choice, I don't think.
No.
Like, if anything, I think, as we already said, it almost feels like it's closer to the farmer and the cranes, because it's got that idea of, you know, doing a bunch of things in order to acquire power, and then that ends up sort of backfiring, kind of a thing. So, do they talk about this in their game notes? It'd be interesting to know if that was intentional or whether it's just a thing that we've picked up on.
No, they say that it's the bear and the two travellers. Stand up the Beastmaster and try to save your friend, or hide and abandon him. Don't really say anything else, to be honest, about how sort of the narrative of the game, to be fair.
So although we've got maybe this sort of separate like mechanics as metaphor, let's set that aside and say the main one that they've chosen, the Traveller and the Bears, do the mechanics of play support the fable that they're going for? And it feels like they kind of don't. Like, there's that, the premise does, but the actual gameplay doesn't. So, like, they're not really in conflict, right? It's not all about, you know, there's no mechanics in play that are all about how betraying your friend is a great idea or anything like that. It's just, there's...
It's just two different story arcs, isn't it, basically?
Yeah, I mean, like, maybe the whole, like, you know, do you put yourself more in harm's way to beat the timer to get to your friend, kind of a thing, is partially there.
Yeah.
So, like, I guess the other branch, rather than the one that we're playing through right now, is more along those lines. So maybe between a satisfactory and a good, I think. Like, mostly they're kind of unrelated, except for that sort of partial one.
Okay, so pacing then.
Well met, friend.
So pacing. So, is there... So we don't necessarily have... Do we have a clear final peak?
In terms of story?
That's a good point,
Yeah.
yes. In terms of story rather than mechanics.
In terms of story, I suppose we do. But in terms of sort of difficulty and sort of like...
Yeah, in terms of sort of emphasising that through the mechanics. If anything, sort of, if you're going for the sort of the combat playthrough, I'll call it, you end up almost with descendant pacing, right? Because you fight your way out of all the things, and then you're just in a village chatting to people.
Yeah.
And then you sort of have the confrontation with your friend. If the other way around, you go through a village, you learn more about the world and the monsters and so on, and then you sort of sneak your way through a castle and you have... So it's interesting that they've kind of got this mirror thing, where if you're one character, yeah, there's ascendant pacing because you're going from jungle to village to castle full of monsters, but if you're going the other way around, it kind of has the opposite effect.
Yeah.
So I would maybe put this sort of around a satisfactory sort of, so there is some ascendant pacing, maybe between a satisfactory and a good, because you're right, it does sort of have that narrative, like peak. In terms of like the actual sort of epilogue and the denouement, like the sort of resolution to that climax, I think that's done really nicely. But the actual sort of dramatic peak, like there's no confrontation, for example, with the guy that kidnapped your friend. There's the confrontation with your friend themselves. I guess again, if you're playing a sneaky friend, you have that sort of final confrontation where there's an actual sort of choice about whether you leave your friend or not. Them some good narrative stakes right there. It's just because I played the other one first, that's the one that I've got sort of at the forefront of my mind. So yeah, maybe between a satisfactory and a good.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think?
No, I agree. No, but, yeah.
Okie doke. In terms of techniques, so we have cutscene, we have some dialogue throughout, and I think it's done relatively well, actually.
So use of more than one game writing techniques are probably about either a good, appropriate, consistent use of more than one writing. I mean, we're almost at an excellent.
Well met, friend.
Somewhere between the two.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just trying to sort of glean more about like the NPC dialogue and try and work out, I guess, what their purpose is.
Yeah.
While you're exploring a town, I recommend you talk to my good friend, the blacksmith. Yeah, like there is some characterization there, but it does feel a bit shoehorned in. Like they've put these characters in here so that they can say they've got some characters and dialogue here.
Yeah.
But I mean, they have some characters and dialogue here, so sure. Yeah, so it feels like maybe between a good and an excellent. Like these characters are good examples of that, but they don't hugely further the story, right? Like it's interesting to see it from both sides, whichever path you're on, but they don't necessarily. Well, they characterize the sort of difference between the two sides, which is kind of nice. So in a single playthrough, they may be seen less important, but because there's two playthroughs or two branches that you can go through, you can see the difference between them. So yeah, like maybe between a good and an excellent.
Does the dialogue change if your meter bar is low? I think we've cut them all.
No, it didn't, which was a shame.
Yeah.
So again, that's the sort of like the really sort of praiseworthy sort of way of having that story engine impact those techniques. Yeah, I think maybe between a good and excellent. For an excellent, you'd want sort of some more of this dialogue throughout the game rather than just localized to this one spot.
Yeah.
Okay, but other than that, we're on to feedback.
Yeah. So this is where sort of about halfway through the development process, we gave some feedback on sort of like their ideas and sort of any sort of like game that they had in development at that time, and these guys received 2 bits of feedback. So if the player decides to release his friend, or the friend kills him or not, it's not supposed to be decided by making the right dialogue choices. Advised to reconsider this. So this does not imply a real choice. There is a right set of answers. Okay, yeah. So instead we decided to use a timer. Okay. So yeah, they wanted it to be based more. They wanted the final sort of denouement to be decided by actually something that you did in the game rather than just through dialogue options, which is fair enough.
Yes, although as we said, that it means it's no longer a choice; it's a skill test, which is fine, but it's not giving the player. It's taking the choice away from the player almost.
Yes.
And then they still have this release your friend or leave. They still have this choice in it.
What for? You mean? Sorry, more.
Okay.
The choice you got now. You mean?
Yeah. So the unchain him or not.
Not sure.
Which is fine. So, any other bits of feedback that they mentioned?
Yeah, they said they put in the rage meter.
Oh, okay. So that we did highlight as being like a really interesting choice that the player does have some control over. Okay. So in which case, so a good would be the feedback has been addressed and the changes have been successful. I think that probably feels about right. I think, a little bit more interpretation about the use of that timer and the way they sort of include those sort of dialogue elements would sort of maybe push them up to excellent. But equally, because they've got that sort of making the choice through gameplay with the rage meter side, it's somewhat better than the satisfactory, or rather, the changes have been more than somewhat successful in that case. So I think a solid good there.
Yeah.
Okie doke. In which case, let's move on to next game. Alright, and this game is, I believe it's called MetroTE. Title screen is really nice. Doesn't have the title on it, but it's got some really, really good music. I'm going to say sort of like nice and synth-wavy, which I quite like. So let's hit play. Okie doke. So we've got some controls on the screen. I can guess what the arrow keys do. Ooh. I finally climbed out of that blasted pit. I like that it's tagged as your inner thoughts as well. It's kind of nice that we know who's talking. Now to go and absorb the celestial power and stop this nightmare. The gravure should be active just this evening in the church. But first to my hometown. I'm getting a very sort of like Legacy of Kain vibe from this. Okay, so we've got left and right, and then we've got what? Z? Z for jump. Unusual choice, but okay. We've got X for stab, C for dash, and V for fireball.
Oh, okay.
That seems quite useful. Okay, so we oh no, I pressed the wrong button because up is not jump. Okie doke. Let's just bop this weird purple cat. So one thing I should probably say at the start of this is I think this game was handed in by just one person, so obviously we'll be bearing that in mind sort of as we're marking it in terms of, you know, the scope and complexity and so on. There we go. So we'll bop that over there. Ooh.
Oh, that's tricky.
That's very tricky.
Yeah.
Alright, let's... Oh, interesting. I bopped it all the way onto a different platform. That's kind of neat. I guess, do I want to be using the dash then, maybe? Nope. Okay. So if we're adding checkpoints, often a good idea to put them the other side of a cutscene or a dialogue thing.
Yeah.
Like the famously bad example of this is I can't remember, is it Metal Gear Solid that has like a 40-minute cutscene or something on one side of a boss fight?
Oh god, that sounds like a Metal Gear Solid thing to do.
Oh, I made the dash, but not. I thought I could save that, but I didn't quite get to the. Sorry, I'm just going to avoid purple cat. Nope. I think if I spam the jump, I can sort of just hover through it, but I fall a bit, or rather I die a little bit quick on the fall. Oh, and the controls are not bad, just not what I'm used to. Like for me, up or W is usually jump or space rather than Z. So having my pinky finger try and sort out the jumping is a little bit unusual. Or almost. All right, this time for sure. Yeah, I'm going to try and... Oh no. Just sort of cheese it and see if I can float my way across, because I don't think I'm going to be able to do the precision platforming elements of this. I think I might have been able to do that if I hadn't bopped the cat.
Yeah. Okay.
Alright, let's... Oh, I'm getting the hang of it. Hey, there we go. Please put a checkpoint here. Okay. So running through the city. Press F to enter. Oh god, another key. That's, again, slightly awkward based on where my hand has to be for all the other controls. Oh my, old friend. Have you come to get the Orb of Power from the infested church? Okay, you know, setting the scene a little bit. It matters little now. I wish you good luck and Godspeed, although I don't suppose you would be so inclined to rescue our old friend Georgie. I know this is your last chance to. So text again, like a little bit slow. It's often nice if there's a button to like rapidly populate that text box and then another one to skip. But
yes, yeah.
Georgie forgot about the curfew. So again, we're we're starting very much in like medias res here, right? We've just clawed our way out of some sort of hell pit. We don't know why we were there. We don't know where we were. Like, it's creating a nice air of mystery, right? And it's being fleshed out by these NPCs. That's kind of nice. What are we going to go for? Are we going to help Georgie, or are we going to do the other thing that we are meant to be doing? Orb of power, something?
Should we get orb of power? Let's go orb of power.
We've got, like, I would really love to help, but orb of power. Oh, I guess this is the church. Ooh, press F to interact. Ooh, sliding around a bit. Okay, so we go into like the church or the catacomb or whatever. I feel horrible for Georgie's fate, so that's kind of nice. That presumably changes based on our selection. We had to get a hold of power at all costs, otherwise everyone will be stuck in this blasted hellscape for God knows how long. Can't look back now. Okie doke. More platforming. Ooh. I think I got stuck in a block briefly there. Oh god, more cat.
Oh.
This is fine. Can I get back on the platform? I don't think I can. Oh, wait, maybe I can.
There we go. Oh, no, you can't.
I can't get through it.
Oh, he's just stabbing it. Stab the invisible wall.
Oh, I'm not touching anything this time, I'm just flying through space. Is there... Alright, I might have to quit and try that again, which means I'm back to tangling with this platform. Okay, while I'm wrestling with this, shall we make a start on looking at it in terms of the mark scheme?
Yes. So, first category is
easy.
Quality. So we'll do information design first. So is key information shown? I suppose we don't seem to have a health bar or anything. I'm guessing it's just we are on the platform or we are not.
Well, there's the purple cat things, right? Do they damage us or do they just push us off?
I think they might just push us off.
Okay.
Because I don't see a health bar unless it's hidden.
Yeah, and there's no real interaction of, or rather, feedback. Like none of the sprites flash when we damage them. I don't think they just sort of get pushed back. So there was something about something in the graveyard, and there was something about the church. I've forgotten where Georgie was. Did you actually say where Georgie was? Let me.
Well, I couldn't say. I was looking at the mark scheme.
This is going to take a little while to click through, isn't it? So yeah, in terms of information design, so I think we can say, most of the key information is shown, right? It's very obvious what a platform is. It's very obvious what an enemy is. It's very obvious what's interactable because of the nice big press F to interact. The way the controls are tutorialized, obviously could be a little bit better, but the controls are all there, which is good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they all work as well. We'll come on to that later, I suppose.
Oh, he's been dragged to the cemetery. There we go.
So, should we say a good?
Yeah, I think a solid good. Let me just... Interesting. So even though we can promise to save Georgie, if we go to the church instead of the cemetery, we still get the same bit of dialogue.
Oh.
So on the one hand, it's kind of interesting because we make the sort of dialogue choice about what we're telling John that we're going to do, and then we have a sort of diegetic choice about what we actually do.
With their narrative structure they've got in their game notes, that is a choice that you can make. So you can either choose the cemetery or the church, even if you don't promise John.
Yeah, which means the promise is kind of inconsequential, right? It doesn't actually do anything. But it's nice that the choice is sort of carried out in gameplay.
Yes.
But we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, or I'm getting ahead of us. Ooh, interesting.
Floating cap? Oh, yeah, we just get pushed off, yeah.
And then we're stuck down here, unfortunately. Can I sneak my way through here so I don't have to do that bit again? No. Alright, I think I might have to quit and settings. Ooh, nice that there's some settings.
There's a resolution display as well.
Yeah. Sometimes, quite nice, particularly for prototypes and portfolio games, if you put a a level select or something that lets us skip through any bits that I get stuck on. But that's little extra bits of polish that, again, single person on this project, so they may not have had time for that. So graphics. Overall, I quite like the graphics. Like our protagonist sprite, the enemy sprites, the background, all work quite nicely together. The floating platforms and the the ceiling sort of texture feels a little bit out of place, like particularly when they get matched together here, right? So we have you could argue that it's cobblestones or something like that, but it feels a little bit out of place.
Yeah, they're a little bit too shiny, aren't they?
Yeah, and I kind of like what they've done here, right? They've clearly taken the interior of one of the church bits and then added a roof to it.
Yeah.
It doesn't fit perfectly, but it's a good attempt at sort of making the most of the assets that they have access to. So let's take a quick look at this. So here's the thing. I don't think all of the graphics are totally consistent, but I do think they are quite effective. And again, we can sort of overlook some of the things because, again, single person, and they're not too jarring, right? They feel like they might be from a slightly different platformer game, but then again, it's not like it's, they've tried mashing 3D and 2D art together or, incredibly different styles. So I think it's... Ooh! And I say that, that background is, really nice. This one they've put together is quite good. And also things like the text, the font and the text boxes. It's not Unity default. They've put some thought and effort into making it work together. So I think probably at a good here.
Yeah.
Maybe a little higher. What do you think?
Consistent, effective, and appealing. I mean, they are quite appealing, and just like you say, they're not completely consistent. So probably between a good and an excellent. Would you say?
Yeah, that seems to fit nicely. I was about to say I didn't know if I could get by there, but I managed it somehow. Okay, audio. So we have some music. Which is very, very cool and atmospheric synthwave. I'm not sure it fits the style of the gameplay hugely. And I don't think we have any audio effects, so we don't have a jump sound, we don't have a fireball sound, which is a bit of a shame because cool special attacks and things like that, you kind of want some amount of punch behind them. You want that sort of feedback. There is a little. Hang on, let me bump. So I've had to turn the sound down quite a bit because the music is quite loud. So just cover your ears for a second if you're wearing headphones. So there is technically a bit of a swoosh as we do a dash. I can only bring the full volume down, not the... Okay, it's actually music though. So there's some footsteps and there is a swoosh. And a jump thing. Okay, so I think a lot of it is actually just covered up by the music.
Okay, so we have effects and music.
Yeah.
Do you say that they're complementary? You said that the background music sometimes doesn't completely fit with the mood.
I don't know if it completely fits, although, big purple moon and sort of terrifying thing kind of, weirdly does kind of gel with synthwave in a way. I think probably a good again. I think they could be doing more with the audio, particularly the sound effects. Like I say, the fireball definitely still needs a swoosh. The fact that the fact that the levels aren't properly balanced, it all gets sort of covered by the music if you don't turn the volume down. But otherwise, I think it's a good. They've made a good effort to sort of put together like a decent mix of audio and or music and effects rather.
Nice, that's good.
Okay, in terms of meaningful play, I mean it's definitely a game. I'm definitely playing it. The controls we'll talk about in a second. I think there actually are some combat noises again. There we go. What was I saying? I've already got distracted by fighting a giant purple cat. Mechanics.
Yes.
Got a number of different mechanics. We've got like jumping and platforming and movement. We've got a couple of different attacks. Some of the attacks, I don't know if the dash is an attack, but it's definitely additional movement, and it's required for some of the platforming like that. We've got double jumps. We've got. I'm just gonna. There we go. Yeah, so set of complementary mechanics. I think we're at least there, so that would be a good. Would we say it's a wide set?
I would probably put it between complementary and wide, sort of like between a good and excellent.
I agree. I think they have a number of different mechanics. I don't think they're making necessarily full use of all of them, but well, they're using the dash like really nicely. Like they've designed the level so that you need to use that dash at points. Things like it'd be nice if there was like more to differentiate or require the use of the fireball versus the generic slash and things like that. But overall, yeah, I agree. I think between a good and an excellent there. Controls. Movement's fine. The jump's a little bit off, and I'm trying to describe how. Like, the gravity, I think, feels a little bit hard on the way down. I think it needs a little bit more leeway. And it's also, like, the momentum of how far you can jump to the side, for example, doesn't feel quite right for some of the platforms. So overall, I would say reasonable set of usable controls. I don't think they're as smooth as they could be, and I don't think they're as intuitive as they could be. But they do work fine, and I am managing to, I'm managing to play and get through. Hello, Georgie. Ooh, you managed to rescue Georgie, but it was too late to achieve your purpose, so you settled back in town and protected the villagers. Unfortunately for you and the rest of the world, an unknown party of brave souls managed to stop the corruption later on. Maybe you made the right choice after all. Okay.
Okay.
So I don't know if there's a way to reset. So I might have to quit out and relaunch that. So let's do that, and let's keep an eye on the recording and make sure it's definitely recording. Ooh, we're loud again. There we go. Okay, so what were we talking about? Controls, yeah. A reasonable set of usable controls. I think we're at a satisfactory for that.
Yep.
Bugs. Overall, I would say the game's reasonably complex, particularly factoring in the fact that it's the work of a single person. There are definitely quite a few bugs in terms of, sort of like us getting stuck under the world and things like that. Again, sort of factoring in that it's one person, we might say that this is a satisfactory. The game is reasonably complex, but there are minor bugs.
Yeah.
Certainly there's no like hard crashes or anything like that. There was a bit of a problem with the other one, and again, I think some of the issues I was having initially were just down to like the jump not being as intuitive as I expected. So yeah, I think that's probably a satisfactory for bugs.
Yeah.
Okie doke. So next on to how well it fulfilled the brief. Story engine. So how does the game world impact the story? Well, so what did they mention in their game notes about this?
So, let me read it now. By choosing the direction you wish to proceed, as well as the promise that you make, you'll change both your narrative fate as well as that of the characters you encounter. Okay, so that's gameplay as in like the actual physical choice you're going to, like you said, that actually going into the graveyard or going into the church, I don't see
there's not a
else.
lot else, right?
Yeah, I don't. It's and that's not really a. I mean, it is a gameplay choice, but it's more.
It's quite a limited one. It's very close to it just being a like a story choice in the sense of it's effectively, do you want to go down door A or door B? It's not tracking anything that we're doing sort of as we play. So what would an extensive example of this be? Something like, for example, well, I mean, I guess if we're talking about how corrupted we're becoming and how corrupted the world is becoming, something like tracking the number of enemies we kill that we've seen sort of used effectively elsewhere.
Yes. Yeah.
And things like that. But also,
it's a gameplay choice that impacts the story. So
yeah,
the number of enemies we killed, and then if they're too high or too low or something, it will give us a different ending at the end.
So a pass would be a few sparse or minor examples of where the game world impacts the story, and that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah.
And that's kind of being perhaps a little generous by sort of treating that sort of which door you open as a gameplay choice rather than a straight up story choice. But okay, let's call that a pass. Story to game world.
So what have we got on their notes? They have how to present the way you need to make the game environment. And offers a shorthand see what you need to understand for the following interactions. It offers you an active choice in the fate of the character you're playing as, more of a moral one, but clearly decisive in their fate.
So, it feels a bit like there is support for these story choices, like the fact that we can chat or make a promise to our friend here. But are there any consequences for keeping or breaking this promise? Like, it doesn't... Again, if we're considering the route that we take in the game to be a gameplay choice rather than a story choice, then there is no story choice in a way. So it feels like there is support for it, but it's not utilised. Like, the story engine can offer us choices, but currently those choices don't have consequences, which would put them at, I think, by the mark scheme, a poor, right? It's, some support for story elements in the game, but the story has no real impact on the game world. Like, the choices that we make don't change, the enemies we fight or the mechanics that we have or anything like that.
Yeah.
Like, alternatively, you could see that that door, that choice of two doors being a story choice, and it having an impact on the game world in that it affects what level you play through next. But then you'd have the flip side of, okay, well, if that's a story choice, then there's nothing that you're doing within the gameplay that affects it. So I think that's the way that we look at it, and you could argue that it's actually the other way around, but it doesn't actually change that one is a pass and one is a poor, I think.
Yes.
Okie doke. So next is the agency, so the structure and the choices that we can make and so on.
So looking at the structure, it is branching. It does seem to have an impact if you make the promise or not.
Really?
Yeah, which I didn't notice actually on your playthrough, but apparently it is. There's a separate cemetery ending whether you promise to go to the cemetery or the church. Which I didn't. Maybe, I don't know.
This ending also seems bugged, unfortunately. I can't actually interact with this. Okay, in which case... Okay, I think we might have to revisit the bugs and sort of knock it down to a pass, because I think we can now probably say that there are some serious bugs on that particular path if we can't finish it, unfortunately. So I will try and go through again, and this time I'll try and make that promise and then break it and see what happens. And then maybe we'll revisit the story engine if they actually are utilising the support for that story choice. Although, from what we've seen so far, they haven't. In terms of the branching, there's definitely the branch of do we pick the cemetery or not?
Yep.
Okay, so if I think last time I said I'd help. This time if I say I won't, and then help anyway, is that going to have an impact? What does the structure that they've got suggest?
According to the structure, yes, that would make a dip. So hang on, sorry, you're not showing your screen anymore, but so do you make... Is there only a yes or no choice on the promise that you make to John?
Yes, there's promise to help him or say that you're too busy and you've got other stuff going on.
Okay. So, yes, it does. So, it would make a difference. If you say you don't help and actually do, that apparently does make a difference.
Okay. I guess we'll find out how in a moment. So we'll revisit that then. Okay, at least there's a checkpoint there, that's good. Okay, so what branches do they have listed in their game notes?
So they have, for your playthrough at the moment, so did you make the promise or not?
So I said I wouldn't do it, but
Okay.
but I'm not worried about specifically this branch, just sort of what branches do they say there are. So they say there are effectively 4 branches, like 1 for each promise, and then from there 1 for each
Yes.
action.
1 for each place that you go, yeah. So a total of 4, endings.
You definitely seem to slide off some of these platforms a little bit easily as well, which I think probably is part of the problem that we had with some of the mechanics. I think the momentum for the dash is what carries you off. Anyway. Sorry, I'm getting distracted because I want to see this ending before we really...
No, I think it's a good idea to see the ending. Yeah. Oh no.
Okay. Okay, for now let's assume that there are 4 very different branches to their story. So we have... Let's take a look at the mark scheme. So that would be... some branching points would be a satisfactory. Several branching points would be a good. It feels like... This is...
Throughout the game.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like they're throughout the game because they're both right next to each other, sort of in the middle. There are no real other sort of points of deviation or choices that we can make.
Yeah. So probably between a satisfactory and a good.
Yeah, I think so. Like it's, I guess here's the thing, right? Whether or not how impactful the difference between those branches are, like the making a promise or not. If they're there, they're there. It's this next bit that's the thing. Like how, like if we're going to make a promise to our friend, or rather, if we're going to tell our friend that we can't possibly help and then help anyway, is that an interesting choice? Because when we were playing it, we just assumed that it had no impact at all, right? Rather than it's wait for me, George. I'm all. So this, you're right. It seems like we got different dialogues there. You managed to rescue Georgie, but it was too late to achieve your purpose, so you settled back into there.
Oh, that's not
That
different.
looks
is it?
the same.
Yeah.
Maybe I made the same promise before, but yeah, to me it looks like that is just the one branch. So in which case I would maybe bump the structure down to a satisfactory for now, and I'll play through it again and we'll try and confirm that that's actually... I've got to make sure I'm still capturing the right screen. Oh, there we go. There's the music kicking in. There we go. So yeah, I would say if that's the case, it feels like there is only the one branch. Obviously, if there's that bug that's preventing us getting to the other ending, we can't see if there's different endings there. So if we promised we would save Georgie and then broke that promise, that feels like it would have a more impactful choice than saying we couldn't and then doing it.
Yeah.
But okay, in terms of the quality of the choices, a pass would be there are few interesting choices. A satisfactory would be there are some interesting choices, and again it feels like there's kind of relatively few, right? We're effectively asked the same choice twice, which is save Georgie, yes or no. And the fact that we're asked it twice, it doesn't make the agency necessarily problematic, but it's kind of, I don't know, to me it feels a little bit incoherent about the way it's presented. Like it makes it feel like the first choice doesn't mean anything because the only thing that matters is the actual outcome of whether you save him or not, right? Like,
Yeah.
Georgie has no idea whether we promised to save him or not. And I guess it's the fate of the world that matters. So okay, if I say I will help Georgie, and then this time we do help Georgie rather than we'll see if that changes at all. I don't think it will though. So yeah, in terms of an interesting choice narratively, it's get the MacGuffin to save the world, or potentially risk the fate of the world to save your friend. Like, that's a relatively interesting choice. It's not necessarily a calculation. There are certainly people that would argue that it's definitely a calculation, but we're not going to get into philosophical discussions at this point. So yeah, in terms of that, I think the choice that they present is an interesting one, but there is kind of just the one choice. You just make it twice. So I think that feels like it's at the pass level.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking about whether it was probably between a pass and a satisfactory, but like you say, it's kind of like the same choice twice, isn't it? I think it sort of needed like one more choice, didn't it? One more interesting choice at some point, maybe in the great. Oh.
So it says at least you managed to keep your promise.
Oh, but yeah.
But it's still basically the same ending, so it's not. Yeah. Okay, so it's technically different, but not. Which, on the one hand, is good. It's recognizing that we made that choice, and then it is reflecting that back at the ending. It's just not, massively branching the narrative in any way. So yeah, a pass. Yeah. So just going back to structure, a pass would be some minor branching points. And that feels about right then.
Yeah.
Like there's one important branching point, which is save Georgie or save the world, and then there's a couple of like minor ones after it as well. Or rather, technically before it, but they don't really have a massive impact from what it seems. Anyway, design element, poetics. So how well does this game carry over the themes of what they were trying to get at? It feels to me that they were going for the tortoise and the eagle, which is all about, if you get everything that you want, you're effectively doomed. It's a shame that we couldn't see the other branch because of that bug with getting to the ending, but it feels like if we get the orb of power, we become horribly corrupt, we don't actually save the world after all, and the correct choice was saving our friend. It's interesting that, I'm sort of intuiting that from just that would be a narratively sensible way to frame it. It's interesting that this other party of brave souls didn't mess it up in the same way that we would have if we'd tried to do it, but sure.
Yeah.
Mechanically, none of the gameplay mechanics, again, sort of are about acquiring power, right? The only sort of choice that we make with regard to that is left door or right door. Otherwise, and again, this ties back into sort of how you could make the story engine affect things. If you're killing these purple cat monsters to acquire power, to make your fireballs more powerful, or maybe you don't start with any fireballs, and every time you kill a purple cat monster, you get 3. Or something like that. Then but every time you do that, you, I don't know, lose some max health, or it just keeps a track, and if you do it too much, then the world is doomed, kind of a thing, because you're now corrupt. Like that would be a really good way of sort of incorporating the mechanics into the story engine and the poetics into those mechanics, I think. So as it is, probably a satisfactory, right? They're not in conflict, but they're not really supporting one another.
Yeah. So on to pacing.
Okie doke.
I don't know about. So pacing is unclear or flat. I mean, I'm trying to think of a reason why it's very. I think the church level and the graveyard or the cemetery, they're fairly similar, aren't they? I suppose in terms of difficulty, and you only do one of them.
Yeah. So like mechanically, right? We have this introduction to. Like mechanically, actually, this is a really nice introduction to the level, right? We can see a monster. It's across a gap. We've got this space to try out all of our different controls, and then we have to prove that we can jump, or fail to prove that we can jump before we continue.
Mm-hmm.
Then we sort of get a little bit of a platforming puzzle, and then an interlude where we talk to an NPC, and then like mechanically the difficulty ramps up with more platforming and more monsters.
Yeah.
Narratively, because we're starting in medias res, we're already starting at a relatively high level of tension and pacing, right? We've climbed out of some hell pit. The world's coming to an end. We need the orb of power. We're very much starting like in the middle of the sort of action here. It doesn't hugely escalate though, you're right. Like there's no final climax. We just sort of bump into our friend and then say, aha, we've done it, and then there's that sort of fairly rapid denouement where we find out that actually we made the right choice after all, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So
So I suppose, because you're saying about climbing out of that sort of hell pit thing, that is, I suppose, some ascending pacing, but I don't know whether it's enough to get it into sort of satisfactory level.
Yeah,
So
I think we're maybe between a satisfactory and a good.
Okay, yeah.
Now, the starting in medias res thing comes more into play here, because that is a storytelling technique, right? We're starting in the middle of the action, we're creating an air of mystery, we are letting the audience or the player fill in some of the gaps and letting NPCs fill in the others. So in that sense, they've got a number of different game writing techniques there, right? Again, the scope's a bit smaller, so they don't necessarily have... okay, yep, fell through the floor that time, that's kind of annoying. Fell through... what am I saying? They don't have necessarily the scope to have lots of different examples of that. But we have our inner monologue, we have discussions with the other characters. So the story's being told in a number of different ways. It's not... what was I trying to say? It's not sort of necessarily thoroughly consistent throughout, just because there's not enough space for it to sort of be weaved all the way through the game. But otherwise, I would say it's pretty good. Maybe pretty good,
Yeah.
verging on an excellent. What do you think?
So excellent would be appropriate and consistent use of more than one, or the use of more than one. I'd probably say it was just good. Or maybe I'm me.
I'm going to say between the two, and now I'm actually wondering maybe it should be the excellent, because they're definitely appropriate techniques of storytelling, right? Like the way
yeah.
they've framed the story works really well. Like we say, the consistency is a bit lacking, but part of that's down to sort of the smaller scope of the game. So, all right, if you say good and I say excellent, that feels to me like it's a pretty good case to put it between the two.
Yeah.
And lastly, feedback.
So their feedback. So they got some feedback during the lab about sort of like partway through their development of this game. And this is what they said. So they said, I have both observed some shortcomings myself while talking about the coursework which I addressed, so lack of music. The main point of the video was one discussion at the time. It's hard for agency and choices to be present, so I rectified that by adding some more agency and outcome through that in the story of this game prototype, mainly this promise you make to the character you encounter. Okay. So the option to do so made it possible for multiple endings. So that's
okay.
the feedback. The feedback was that they, I suppose, didn't have enough. I'm assuming that they had maybe only
the choice
two
of the
endings.
2 doors, I'm guessing, and then they added
Yeah.
the promise as well, which, as we've sort of already said, isn't adding an extra choice, it's adding the same choice twice.
Yeah.
And likewise, it means the branches aren't, like, there's one very important branch, and then the other 2 seemingly don't have much impact on the actual story. So it feels like this is probably at a pass, right? They have done something to address the changes. In fact, that like adding the music has been a good addition, because that, again, although the synthwave maybe isn't fitting for a spooky catacomb, it's a good addition to give it some amount of atmosphere at least. In terms of the other one, certainly if they only had the one choice, we'd be, you know, a bit displeased that it only had the one choice. At least this way, they've got 2 choices, even if they're not massively impact. It's a pass, right? Like they have tried to address the feedback. It hasn't had all of the effects that they were hoping for, I think, is where we're at. So that feels like a pass to me.
Yes. Yeah. I'd say it was pretty solidly a pass. Yeah.
Okie doke. And with that, I think that is the end for this game, and it is the end for this batch of games. So we will see you again soon for another video. Bye bye.